Alright everybody, welcome to our new week in Graduate Research and Design class. It's about mixed methods and action research. Last week you learned about qualitative research, which is a new area or a new way of thinking about research to gain understanding and feelings and those kinds of things, not just numbers like quantitative research. But as you look at qualitative versus quantitative research, there's actually one of these methods that takes up a vastly higher amount of time in order to do the research. Can you think of which one it is, whether it's qualitative or quantitative? If you guessed that it was qualitative research, you're right. Qualitative research takes up a lot more time to do because you spend so much time in the field collecting data, and then you spend a lot more time as well analyzing the data. With quantitative research, you spend a lot more time up front figuring out exactly what variables you want to look at and manipulate, and the perfect instruments to use and so forth. But with qualitative research, you spend a lot of time in the end, so collecting the data and also analyzing the data takes a lot more time, and in overall qualitative research takes a lot more time. In the end, with quantitative research, your data analysis uses some complicated mathematical techniques to figure out, but those usually don't take a very long time to actually conduct. So that's just some information about those two methods and how they differ. Independence from research activity. Alright, so this week it's Independence Day. Tomorrow will be July 4th, Independence Day. We celebrate that day and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But today I'm going to declare your independence from the research activity. You may have seen this in the Dropbox or in other places in the course. There's something called a research activity. And with the summer classes, I rarely have enough time to run that research activity. It's where you get to be involved in a research study and help out with collecting data. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time in the class to do that. And that's, as is the case with most summer classes, everything has to be condensed into a shorter time. So don't expect to receive a grade on the research activity or have to hand anything in for that, because I'm declaring your independence from that. So you don't have to do the research activity. Another thing to be aware of is in the gradebook there have been those, in the past we had those learning modules that you do. Those have recorded the incorrect grades for you from your experiences, but those don't count towards your final grade as a reminder, so don't worry about what grade you have for the independent or learning modules is what I should say, not independent, from the past. But we haven't done those for several weeks now. So, all right. Let's move on to this week's activities. You have chapters 15 and 16 on mixed methods research and action research. And then you have a discussion of research designs. So we're going to talk, last week we talked about quantitative research methods, what one of the methods might you choose for your research study. This week we're talking about qualitative research methods along with mixed methods and action research, which are not necessarily qualitative. And you can talk about which ones of these do you think might, has your opinion changed? Which one of these do you think might work well for you, if any? And if not, that's okay too. And be sure to respond to at least 2 other students' posts. You'll complete chapters 15 and 16 quizzes on those chapters. And as a reminder, do read the chapter first, then mark it up a little bit maybe, and then also go through and do the quiz. But make sure you leave yourself time to do the quiz again if you want or need to. It will record the highest score out of whatever quiz you took, so it's to your advantage to take it twice if you need to. And then finally, you'll submit your design participants and procedures assignment. Now this is actually looking at what you would actually do for your research study. So notice here that I have not included mixed methods or action research in this, but you could probably do one on action research. I'm going to discourage you from doing a mixed methods research study for this class, because that means that you would have to do both qualitative and quantitative methods, and you would have to cover all of the various items for both of those methods rather than just one in this assignment, which is pretty hard to do for your first time. So I don't want you to do mixed methods here though. Anyway, you're going to determine which type of quantitative or qualitative study your proposal represents, and you have to choose whether it's causal comparative, experimental, narrative, ethnographic, or case study. All those are your choices that you can choose from. And then you are going to tell me who are your actual participants. This should be an actual group of people that you could use for your study. What are your instruments for quantitative research proposals? So be sure to include and discuss an instrument and cite the instrument if it's been created by someone else, or if you're going to create it yourself, include some sample items that might be on the instrument. The design, and for quantitative proposals you want to include a figure or diagram that shows the research design. So it might show the different conditions and what their treatments will be versus the control, and so forth, and the procedure. That's the steps you will take for your research study. This is really getting into the proposal of the research study. What are you going to do for your research study? If it's a qualitative research proposal, you're going to choose the types of qualitative research. Who are your participants? What will you do for data collection? This is a huge part of the qualitative research process. How are you going to collect that data? What's the process going to look like for data collection? And then the procedure. All right, and with qualitative research too, it's a little bit different. I do include or require you to include some citations that talk about, what you're going for as far as this goes and how it relates to the previous literature. So you're going to have to include some of your literature review there. Let's see. Let me go down here. So qualitative, what I'm looking for is relevant literature citations are included that relate to the study and are presented and support the need for the study. Because again, qualitative research doesn't do a lot of the work up front, but you have to justify what you're doing. You have to connect it to the literature. And also, let's see, any instruments you use. Again, there might be a re-interview protocol or a observation protocol that you might have to include. Any potential threats. For both of them, you have to explain what are potential threats to validity associated with the design, as well as ways the study may overcome these threats. In other words, how will the instruments actually measure what they're intended to measure, and what are potential ways that they might not? So you have to be honest about that and then discuss what that is. For example, with a survey research, you know that you're only getting a snapshot of one moment. When people take the survey, that's the moment that they fill it out, right? You're only getting that time. You're not getting other times when they might feel differently on things. And so how can you overcome that threat to validity of, or reliability, I guess that would be, of changing over time? Or with a survey, people might respond not honestly, right? They could respond any way they really want to on a survey. Although we assume they'll respond honestly, we don't know for sure if they will. So talk about that maybe. They might respond dishonestly, they might respond in ways that aren't actually the truth. It's always possible in a survey. That's a threat to validity. So discuss those in this assignment, and this is due by the end of the week. And as a reminder too, there is an assignment coming up next week as well, and that's the literature review. So that is the final literature review. Excuse me. What you take from that is you're going to take your preliminary literature review and then add in to add 15 more sources, to add in as many as you need to make 15 or more sources of information. And again, it should have a focus toward your planned research study. So now you've got a better idea of what your research study will be. So you focus toward that. You categorize the studies logically according to the results. And then writing flows logically and systematically, and it has an introduction, body, and summary. So each literature review has its own introduction and summary or conclusion that are written by the author of the literature review, so you'll write those on the issues. And so that will be sort of its own self-contained piece of your final research proposal, which will include the literature review. But a literature review in its own self has an introduction and a summary that is different from the introduction to your research study proposal, which will include the literature review. So that's something to be aware of as well coming up next week. So I want to take a few minutes and just talk about some of these different methods of research that we're learning about this week. First is mixed methods research. And this type of research allows us to, action research actually is first. Here we go. So this type of research is a systematic inquiry into one's own environment for improving outcomes. So you're looking at your own environment, some place that you may already work or volunteer or go to school at. You're going to use that as your research area or research environment. And usually in education, it's any systematic inquiry conducted by teachers, principals, school counselors, or other stakeholders in the teaching and learning environment that involves gathering information about the ways in which their particular schools operate, the teachers teach, and the students learn. So a classic example from education would be that a teacher in the classroom who has a unit in the class that doesn't seem to be working very well, from past experience, and wants to try something new with this unit. And then they want to collect data to see how well students learned from the new thing that they tried. And so they try it out, they collect the data, and they find that, hey, students did learn better because I tried this new thing. Therefore, I have good evidence that I should keep trying this new thing. That's action research. That's the way it works. So the purpose of action research is to effect positive change within an environment and improve student outcomes and subsequently improve lives. And it's to solve everyday problems. It's not just big pointy-headed academic problems like why is there air? No, it's more about everyday problems, the kinds of problems that teachers deal with in the classroom or other people who are professionals working in a different environment want to solve. And then reflection, looking critically at one's own practice. And it encourages change and risks. So it encourages teachers to take a few risks, make a few changes. Pay no attention to that meme there. It doesn't really relate to any of this, does it? So that's action research. And you'll be learning more about that in the reading for this week. And then mixed methods research is another type of research that allows you to blend both qualitative and quantitative methods into one research study. So qualitative and quantitative data collection within the same research study. And so you have different designs and ways to do this. You can have, if you capitalize something, that means it's the primary component. So quantitative could be the primary component, and then you do a follow-up qualitative item. So you could have like a big survey that you run to a bunch of teachers, and then you could do some follow-up questions that ask about the same kinds of things the survey asked about, but it gets you a little bit better information from maybe in interviews or something like that. And that's explanatory sequential. Exploratory sequential is if you have a large qualitative element that you do, collecting tons of qualitative data, and then you follow up with a small quantitative instrument like a survey or something that from the qualitative instrument leads you to the quantitative data that you want to collect. And then convergent parallel is a design where you do both. Both are equally important and you do both at the same time. That's the idea with that design. You have a quantitative element and a qualitative element going at the same time. And let's see, so explanatory sequential, we already covered that one. But those are just different types of mixed methods research that you can conduct and complete. And they work pretty well as you think about the different kinds of mixed methods research and combining the two qualitative and quantitative methods. But again, in this class, overall, this is a good research method to use because you can gain a greater understanding of a phenomenon. But in this class, I do discourage you from doing a mixed methods type study proposal because it's just easier for you and your first option or your first opportunity to go to do the research to just focus on one method and not have to cover everything from every method that you choose. So that's the presentation for this week. Anyway, good luck with learning about mixed methods in action research. These are some interesting methods of research that you might want to use in the future.